Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret. 8 people will never go home again. Their lives cut short at the hands of a terrorist, a man investigators say did it in the name of ISIS and is now bragging about it to investigators. We just saw authorities in New York, including the acting U.S. Attorney June Kim, lay out the complaint as they have it against this man, Sayfullo Saipov. He will be charged officially, but the criminal complaint is very detailed and says that Saipov has been telling investigators in the hospital that he wanted to kill as many people as possible. He rented this Home Depot truck, this pickup truck, and had practice runs 2 weeks ago to see how he would turn onto the pedestrian walkways. He went into the West Side Highway and then proceeded. He wanted to go to the Brooklyn Bridge, but ran into that school bus. And he said he wanted to kill as many people as possible. At one point, according to the complaint, Saipov wanted to put ISIS flags on the pickup truck in the front and in the back, but thought that he would be seen and attract too much attention. While talking to investigators in the hospital, he told them he would like them to bring him an ISIS flag in the hospital. We're told that investigators gave him a Miranda rights that he waived verbally, and now they are getting ready to charge this man with terrorism, among other charges likely. Meantime, here in Washington, President Trump had some choice words for this terror suspect and says he wants to protect our nation by clamping down on an immigration lottery program that let him into the country. This, as of course, one of America's greatest and most resilient cities, prepares to protect thousands of runners and spectators heading to New York for its annual marathon. We have Team Fox coverage tonight. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts with the president's push for more extreme vetting. Chief Intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge with the killer's background and the new information in the investigation. But we begin with senior correspondent Rick Leventhal in New York for us tonight. Good evening, Rick. A lot of information in that, including the second person they were looking for. They no longer want to look for him. They found him, and they're talking to him.
Correct, Brett. They thought he might have information. They're no longer looking for that suspect. I can tell you the NYPD has now cleared the crime scene behind us, and the West Side Highway is reopening to traffic, but the investigation is just now beginning. And as you referenced, a lot of new information coming out of the U.S. Attorney's Office and those charging documents, including that the suspect in this case confessed to his crimes and showed no remorse for the carnage he caused.
A massive team of investigators goes inch by inch over a crime scene stretching nearly a mile along a bike path from Houston Street to Chambers Street in Lower Manhattan and search for a motive for the carnage they say was caused by 29-year-old Sayfullo Saipov. Authorities say it does not appear the Uzbeki national was the target of any probe, but has associates who were on the FBI's radar. Investigators suspect Saipov became radicalized in the U.S., and notes left in the truck make it clear he had been planning the attack for weeks, likely inspired by the Islamic State.
He appears to have followed almost exactly to a T the instructions that ISIS has put out in its social media channels before, with instructions to their followers on how to carry out such an attack.
Here in the U.S. since 2010 on a legal diversity visa, Saipov allegedly drove a rented Home Depot truck at high speed, deliberately hitting bicyclists and pedestrians before slamming into a school bus, killing 8 and wounding a dozen others.
There's multiple people on the ground, Central. We need buses from Houston all the way down to Chambers. I got 4 or 5 people on the ground. Got multiple casualties. This is a mass casualty situation here.
Authorities say Saipov jumped out of the truck yelling Allahu Akbar, meaning God is great in Arabic, holding what appeared to be 2 handguns, leaving several knives behind in the vehicle. The weapons turned out to be paintball and pellet guns. 5-year veteran NYPD officer Ryan Nash, responding to the scene, shot and wounded the suspect, who is now out of surgery. Authorities are searching residences connected to the suspect in Florida and Paterson, New Jersey, where he rented an apartment next to a mosque he also attended. They've questioned his wife, who reportedly claimed no prior knowledge of the attack, and investigators are interviewing friends and family and going through Saipov's internet and phone history to look for influences or connections to known radicals. 5 of the dead were Argentinians, 2 were Americans, and the other was from Belgium. And 9 of the 12 injured are still hospitalized in serious or critical condition.
And Brett, we're told the suspect just entered a federal courtroom in a wheelchair with handcuffs and his feet shackled. And of course, the NYPD, as you mentioned, will have its hands full this weekend protecting the New York City Marathon. 51,000 runners and some 2.5 million spectators expected to line the 26.2-mile route through all 5 boroughs of Manhattan. We're told that the NYPD will have more sand trucks being used as blocker vehicles, twice as many as before, along with twice as many observation teams and counter sniper teams, along with heavy weapons teams. New York City, of course, has been on high alert since 9/11 for terror attacks. That has not changed tonight as they continue to shift to try to adapt to the changing tactics used by these terrorists. Bret?
Rick, thank you. As you just mentioned, Saipov is in court right now, feet shackled, in a wheelchair, facing terrorism charges. Thank you for that live report. Let's look closer now at the investigation surrounding Tuesday's terror attack. We turn to Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge. Good evening, Catherine. You know, looking at this complaint, and it's very detailed, they're getting just a ton from the cell phone. 90 videos of ISIS attacks, beheadings, shootings in the face, other things, 3,000 plus images, ISIS inspired. The radicalization that this guy from Uzbekistan at some point takes on.
Okay, the thing that jumps out at me is that it's not a typical what law enforcement calls flash to bang. In other words, that he gets radicalized and decides within days to commit an act of violence. Based on that news conference, there was premeditation beginning 2 months before. There was a dry run October 22nd where he rented the vehicle, practiced maneuvers with the vehicle, and he was a voracious consumer of the propaganda. And that's important because in almost every case you see someone who is a validator for the terrorists, someone who either tells them online or is a close associate where they live that it's okay to murder innocent people. So
you then wonder about the investigators and the web that they are trying to track down, who he talked to, how he interacted with people. Learning a little bit more about his connections with others possibly coming from Uzbekistan or trying to.
Congressman Mike McCall, who is getting regular briefings, and he's also the Republican chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, told Fox Tonight that there was a wedding in Ohio. We believe it was the suspect's wedding, and 24 individuals from Uzbekistan were invited to the wedding, but they were denied visas into the United States. And this is a central focus of investigators tonight. And when I look at the big picture, you start to see a pattern, significant, perhaps missed opportunities. The wedding, 2 months of preparation, the voracious consumption of the videos, and then specifically this dry run. I mean, this is really an unfortunate thing.
New York authorities said that they may have come across him tangentially in the past in investigations in 2015 where they were focusing on other people that he may have been associated with, but not necessarily interviewing him. Is that correct?
My information, and we reported this early today, is that he has connections to individuals who are known terror suspects, we now understand, with the FBI. So in other words, as they were looking at terror suspects, he kept sort of surfacing his name sort of in their universe of contacts. While he was not the focus of these terrorism investigations, he was certainly in the orbit. So again, this does appear like it may have been another missed opportunity.
Okay, Catherine, we'll come back for any breaking details. Thank you very much. Coming up next, we'll go to the White House with more on the president's reaction to the terror attack and what it means for immigration policy. Keep it here on Fox. President Trump called him an animal and wants to change the visa program that let the terror suspect in Tuesday's deadly attack into this country. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has that part of the story for us from the North Lawn tonight. Good evening, John.
Bret, good evening to you. Since he took office last January, President Trump has been working to toughen up the process for immigrants to get into the United States. Yesterday's terror attack gave him more ammunition for his case, but he was also quick to point political fingers.
Today we mourn the horrifying terrorist attack in New York City.
Meeting with his cabinet today, President Trump laid the blame for the New York attack squarely on the diversity visa lottery program and declared he will take steps to end it.
Diversity lottery sounds nice. It's not nice. It's not good. It's not good. It hasn't been good. We've been against it. So we want to immediately work with Congress on the diversity lottery program, on terminating it, getting rid of it. We want a merit-based program where people come into our country based on merit.
The president also took aim at New York Senator Chuck Schumer, tweeting, quote, "The terrorist came into our country through what is called the Diversity Visa Lottery Program, a Chuck Schumer beauty. I want merit-based." While Schumer did help create the Diversity Visa Program back in 1990, he also sought to end it in 2013, supporting the so-called Gang of Eight immigration bill that would have terminated the program. Today, Schumer compared President Trump's response to the New York attack with that of President Bush after 9/11.
The first thing that President Bush did was invite Senator Clinton and me to the White House, where he pledged to do what was ever in his power to help our city. The contrast between President Bush's actions after 9/11 and President Trump's actions this morning could not be starker.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo denounced the president's tweets.
I think they tended to point fingers,
insisting they were not factual and not helpful. This morning, Cuomo and New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said they did not receive a phone call from President Trump.
I am not bothered that the president didn't call. I am bothered by an attempt by anyone to try to politicize this situation. That plays right into the hands of the terrorist.
In the early hours after the attack, President Trump tweeted that he had just ordered Homeland Security to step up our already extreme vetting program. Being politically correct is fine, but not for this. White House officials tell Fox News that President Trump ordered no new vetting measures as a result of the attack, that he was simply referring to steps that already arose out of his travel ban to toughen standards for people entering the country. But on political correctness, the president insisted the world has to change its thinking.
We have to get much smarter, and we have to get much less politically correct. We're so politically correct that we're afraid to do anything.
President Trump also said he would support an idea floated earlier today by Senator Lindsey Graham: declare Sayfullo Saipov an enemy combatant and send him to the military prison at Guantanamo Bay. It would be the first time anyone who committed a crime on U.S. soil was sent to Gitmo.
I would certainly consider that, yes.
Are you considering that now, sir?
I would certainly consider that.
Are you?
Send him to Gitmo. I would certainly consider that, yes.
Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders this afternoon clarified the president's position, saying that while he is not advocating sending Saipov to Guantanamo Bay, he certainly would support such a move. Sanders added that the president does consider Saipov to be an enemy combatant. And by the way, Bret, this afternoon, the president said that he did, in fact, call Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio. That was earlier this afternoon. Bret?
And the acting U.S. attorney said that decision is above his pay grade, so we'll see where that goes. John Roberts live in the North Lawn. John, thank you.
Thanks,
Meanwhile, the special counsel's investigation into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin faces new questions on Capitol Hill as Republican lawmakers probe whether the Obama-era Justice Department may have used the so-called Trump dossier as justification to spy on the Trump campaign. That, plus this afternoon, the president spoke out about this investigation. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has our report.
When investigators for House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes arrived at the Justice Department Tuesday to review DOJ and FBI documents relating to the infamous Trump dossier, they were met by two Democratic committee staffers, two staffers for Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, and the Intelligence Committee's ranking Democrat, Adam Schiff, who had earlier argued against the subpoena that pried loose the documents.
It's only going to impede our ability to get at the facts.
The Trump dossier, of course, was the salacious compendium of unverified allegations against then-candidate Trump that was funded by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee and compiled with input from Russian sources by the research firm Fusion GPS. Nunes and other GOP lawmakers want to know whether Justice and the FBI used the dossier last year as the basis for surveillance warrants on Trump campaign personnel.
How would you describe the attitude of Democrats on the Intelligence Committee towards the probing of the origins of this so-called dossier and how they're accepting that?
Well, look, to me, it looks like they're obstructing the investigation.
Committee sources said that DOJ was less than fully responsive to the subpoenas, particularly on foreign surveillance warrants, and that Nunes will seek additional production.
I'm not aware that any change would be necessary at this time.
The White House, meantime, expressed support for Agriculture Department nominee Sam Clovis, the Trump campaign official who encouraged George Papadopoulos to travel to Russia, if feasible, to strengthen contacts in and around the Kremlin. A low-level foreign policy advisor to the campaign, Papadopoulos has since pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russians last year. In the government's original motion to seal documents in the Papadopoulos case, filed shortly after his arrest in July and unsealed this week, the Mueller team argued for secrecy because premature disclosure of Papadopoulos' arrest would, quote, significantly undermine his ability to serve as a proactive cooperator.
That signals that he has probably been wearing a wire or tape recording his conversations with anybody that was involved in the campaign for President Trump.
As well, the special counsel's summary of the Papadopoulos case, Robert Mueller's first accounting of what happened in 2016, has received its first challenge from Joseph Mifsud, the professor who was said to have provided Papadopoulos entree to Russians with dirt on Hillary Clinton. While Professor Mifsud's resume appears thinly defined and his published works have supported the Putin regime, Mifsud told the Telegraph newspaper in London it was, quote, incredible for anyone to suggest he had ever been privy to dirt on Mrs. Clinton. Bret?
James, another newspaper getting some news today. The president commenting on the various investigations with the New York Times today. What about that?
That's right. Late today, the president placed a brief telephone call to the New York Times, according to that newspaper, in which he stated, and I quote, "I'm not under investigation, as you know. With respect to the indictment of his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, charges to which Mr. Manafort has entered a not guilty plea, the president said, even if you look at that, there's not even a mention of Trump in there. That's true. It has nothing to do with us. And with respect to the Washington Post report earlier this week that suggested the president is hunkered down amid the investigation and, quote, angry at everybody, the president told the New York Times, quote, I'm actually not angry at anybody. And you know what, Bret, if that's true, that's an enviable place to be.
James, thank you. Coming up, the CIA releases a trove of Osama bin Laden documents. The ones the Obama administration never wanted you to see. What we're learning tonight, right after this. 6.5 years after the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, we're just now getting new insight into the terrorist leader, his organization, and his reach. Some of it contradicting Obama administration depictions, as now almost 500,000 documents are finally being released that had been held back. National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin reports from the Pentagon on what we're learning about this trove of documents taken from bin Laden's compound in Pakistan.
The CIA released hundreds of thousands of files captured by U.S. Navy SEALs during the May 2011 bin Laden raid, the largest release to date after years of stalling. The document dump includes Osama bin Laden's handwritten 228-page personal journal, 18,000 document files, 79,000 audio files and images, including bin Laden's practice blooper reels before his public speeches, and a series of al-Qaeda home videos, including 2 wedding videos of Osama bin Laden's son Hamza, who is still wanted. It's the first public image released of bin Laden's son as an adult. The documents reveal bin Laden was prone to conspiracy theories and outlines al-Qaeda's complicated relationship to Iran. To understand the U.S. approach to war, bin Laden had a lieutenant translate sections of Bob Woodward's 2010 book, Obama's Wars. The 2014 Intelligence Authorization Act required the release of the remaining bin Laden files. Until today, the intelligence community had released fewer than 600 of them. In an exclusive interview with Fox News, CIA Director Mike Pompeo explained why he pushed for their release.
At least now we will have the vast majority of these documents available for scholars, for counterterrorism experts all around the world to take a look at and have a better understanding of the historical threat to the United States.
Some of the material being withheld from the public include a number of licensed videos, which provide insight into bin Laden's proclivities, including BBC Great Wildlife Moments, Chicken Little, The Three Musketeers, Where in the World is Osama bin Laden, and Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs.
Today, Bret, from the 470,000 files released by the CIA is Osama bin Laden's extensive porn collection, which we are told could not be released due to copyright considerations. Bret?
And Jen, we should point out that this has been released in Arabic, so it's tough to go through to get to all the nuggets that you would think to get to, and also that it has taken so long, and so much of this has yet to be mined.
And it's going to take a long time to go through, as you said, that Arabic. The CIA also did something where you can't change the reports online, so they can't be hacked.
All right. Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. More on this with the panel. We're getting our first look at social media ads linked to Russian actors during the 2016 election. Just a few hours ago, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee made a batch of them public for the first time. Correspondent Peter Ducey joins us from Capitol Hill with a look. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Brett. 150 million Facebook and Instagram users saw some sort of Russian propaganda ahead of the U.S. election last year. And the reason most of it went unnoticed is because most of it had nothing to do with the election. Instead, these Russian bot advertisements on social media sought to inflame tensions in this country about things like police shootings, racial issues, or immigration. Like this one, it shows Border Patrol agents on horseback, promoted by a disguised Russian account called Heart of Texas, and it argues against amnesty using words like rapists, drug dealers, and human traffickers. Some other ads were less subtle. This one shows the devil arm wrestling Jesus and calls Hillary Clinton Satan while calling Trump honest. But not all these Russian bot ads were anti-Clinton. This one is anti-Trump. It's an invite for a Not My President rally that more than 16,000 people RSVP'd for. It goes to show that Russians kept manipulating social media after the election, including very recent posts about kneeling versus standing during the national anthem.
They were tweeting on both sides of the NFL dispute in order to exacerbate the divisions. One witness this committee had said that their strategy is to take a crack in our society and turn it into a chasm.
But there are questions about what kind of impact the advertisements Russians bought actually had, because they spent just a fraction of what the campaigns did.
So they spent $46,000. How much did the Clinton and Trump campaign spend on Facebook? I assume before the election.
Before the election.
They were better organized than the other group.
Combined approximately $81 million.
None of the three tech lawyers today testified about any evidence that they have uncovered showing any link between this Russian social media effort and anybody from the Trump campaign. Bret.
We'll follow it. Peter Ducey live on the Hill. Peter, thank you. Everything you need to know about the rollout of the Republican tax reform plan, tax cuts tomorrow, what's in and what's not in that plan. Well, we're getting some glimpses. Stay here. House Republicans asked for one more day before revealing their tax plan, and depending on whom you speak to, that means the plan is either really going well or it's in deep trouble. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel looks at both sides tonight from Capitol Hill.
The House will be in order. This was supposed to be tax reform rollout day in the House, but Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady announced late last night a delay until tomorrow with President Trump's backing.
It'll be the largest tax cuts in the history of our country by far. The House is doing very well. They've taken an extra few hours.
Yet that won't be the final bill. At a meeting with conservative groups, Speaker Paul Ryan warned attacks on the plan would be launched.
We know K Street's coming after us. We know the special interest groups are going to come and try and protect various carve-outs and loopholes. But we believe that this is right for the American people.
One issue that remains controversial is the state and local deduction in high-tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California.
We just have to retain this deduction for New York taxpayers, the hard-working, middle-class people who are the backbone of our country.
Republican leaders signaled a compromise would be allowing the property tax write-off to continue, but scrapping the income tax deduction. As GOP leaders try to finalize how to pay for at least some of the tax cuts, this morning the president floated going after Obamacare, tweeting, Wouldn't it be great to repeal the very unfair and unpopular individual mandate in Obamacare and use those savings for further tax cuts?
If you repeal the individual mandate, we help to fulfill our promise that we shouldn't force people to buy insurance, but that also has a large cost to government, and when that is removed, it allows us to actually give the middle class more of a tax cut.
Good morning, folks.
Leading House Democrats suggest the GOP is in trouble.
The question is to whether or not they can actually get the votes to pass it out of the Ways and Means Committee. Remains to be seen. That's the level of dysfunctionality they're at.
The president wants tax reform on his desk by Christmas, and the timetable is aggressive, meaning that GOP leaders cannot afford any more delays if they want to deliver in time. Bret?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thanks. Mixed day on Wall Street today. The Dow rose 58. The S&P 500 was up 4. The Nasdaq dropped 11. It's time to pick your plan in less time with fewer options and higher prices. That's the bottom line. Open enrollment begins today for Obamacare. The health care law has survived congressional repeal attempts so far, leading to some skyrocketing prices and fewer choices in some markets. The main enrollment window has been sliced in half by this administration. It ends December 15th in most states. Up next, terror in New York City and around the globe. Our all-star panel weighs in about how it could affect policy.
This animal who did the attacking.
Sayfullo Saipov, a 29-year-old legal permanent resident of the United States.
He came in through the diversity program, as you know, and we're going to stop that.
It appears that Mr. Saipov had been planning this for a number of weeks.
The reports now say that he is in the hospital bed and he's gleeful about what he did.
He appears to have followed almost exactly to a T the instructions that ISIS has put out in its social media channels.
Send him to Gitmo. I would certainly consider that, yes.
Some of the sound today as we get the criminal complaint about this terror suspect in New York. 8 people dead as a result of his actions. The president is considering some changes in policy, tweeting out today, the terrorist came into our country through what's called the diversity visa lottery program, a Chuck Schumer beauty. I want merit-based. The minority leader of the Senate responding, President Trump, instead of politicizing, dividing America, which he always seems to do at times of national tragedy, should be focusing on the real situation, anti-terrorism funding, at which he proposed cutting in his most recent budget. I'm calling on the president to immediately rescind his proposed cuts to this vital anti-terrorism funding. With that, let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard. Anna Palmer, senior Washington correspondent for Politico. And Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. First, Steve, the details in this criminal complaint are pretty amazing. How much this terror suspect is gloating about the attack and how tied he is to ISIS, or at least the videos and propaganda around ISIS.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard to understand just how evil the people who want to attack us are. This makes it very clear how evil they are. Look, I think what this attack makes clear as well is the United States needs to do a better job of looking carefully at who we're letting in the country. There's no question about that. Now, I didn't think a ban, the original Muslim ban as proposed by then candidate Donald Trump, was the answer. It was very clear, and I would think there would be bipartisan support for better scrutiny of the people that we're letting in.
The top recipients of the diversity visa program, as you put them up on a list here, Nepal, Egypt, Iran, the Republic of Congo, and Uzbekistan, where this guy came from. 2,378 of them, FY16 total. It seems like there may be a change in policy coming in.
I don't know. I think if you actually look at where immigration policy has been on Congress and with this White House, it's not gone anywhere. If anything, there's going to do something on DACA and Dreamers probably before this actually happens. But you could see some kind of agreement maybe on this funding issue. That's going to be something that you'll see maybe coming in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. There were some channels, some Democrats pointing specifically to what they say is a dichotomy, a difference between the reaction to the Las Vegas shooting and the reaction today. Take a listen to this.
I think one of the things that we don't want to do is try to create laws that won't create or stop these types of things from happening.
We need strength. We need resolve. We have to stop it. So we're going to get rid of this lottery program as soon as possible.
In other words, you needed a day after the attack. It should be about the victims, not gun policy in one case or immigration policy in another.
Yeah, there's a really good argument for not politicizing events like this, waiting for families to be notified and having some time for people to process just and mourn the lives of the people who've died in these attacks. It is really interesting to hear people who immediately politicized the Las Vegas tragedy, which is a month ago. We still don't know what happened in that case. Immediately moved to politicizing it, blaming all American gun owners. Now say that when you have someone like this guy who's proudly asking to hoist an ISIS flag in his room.
Hospital room.
So
yeah.
we don't really need to wait to find out what motivated him, because he's made it very clear what motivated him. To say, well, now we can't address any political solutions is a very weird thing when they were singing such a different tune a month ago.
It's another big day, and didn't get a lot of coverage other places, but the release of these Osama bin Laden documents from the compound in Pakistan. Steve, you've been following this from the very beginning. We've been following it here on Fox. It's a little frustrating in that there are almost 500,000 of these documents in Arabic as we try to go through them piece by piece. What are the highlights so far that you all see?
Well, I think this is important in that it tells us about the evolving threat from jihadists, and it tells us about the way that the previous administration talked about that evolving threat. And if you look back at January 19th of this year, the DNI put out a statement in which they said, we're releasing the final cache of bin Laden documents, bringing the total to 571 documents. 571. We had 470,000 documents released today. What that makes clear is the DNI, the Obama administration, was not being clear, was not being honest about what they had. The other thing in that January 19th, less than 24 hours before Barack Obama left office, in that release said that the relationship between Iran and al-Qaeda were characterized by hatred and suspicion. Well, we saw today the release of a wedding video of Hamza bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's son. That wedding video was shot in Iran. There's a 19-page document detailing the relationship between Iran and al-Qaeda. While there were certainly tensions, nobody should downplay those tensions, the senior al-Qaeda official who wrote that document said that we got everything we need from this. And Osama bin Laden in his own hand once called Iran the main artery for the growth and sustenance of al-Qaeda.
So just piece this together for somebody just following this. These documents are obtained at the raid of Osama bin Laden. At the time, Obama administration officials said it was a treasure trove, a college library full of information. But yet we don't get them over all these years. As the Obama administration says that al-Qaeda is on the run, bin Laden is dead, GM is alive. And yet now we are just going into what exactly the reach was.
Well, and I would go even further. They released selective documents. They released 17 documents in May of 2012 on the one-year anniversary of the raid. Those documents, 6 months before the 2012 election, were designed to show Osama bin Laden out of it, not really in charge, not with any day-to-day coordination of the network. And in fact, now you see the broader set of documents, and bin Laden was in charge in everything from crops that they were growing in Africa, to maintaining the affiliates, to decentralizing power of al-Qaeda, creating these strong affiliates around the world so that they couldn't be targeted by the United States. It's a treasure trove now, and I'm glad that historians and other experts are going to have an opportunity to look through it.
And the question about Iran is a really big question, especially because the Obama administration wanted that Iran deal so bad. I want to talk about more of this. I want to talk more about today. Good thing we have an online show, because we had the news conference in the middle of this. The panel continues in the online show at the top of the hour. When we come back, a home run. Finally, finally tonight, as Houston continues to recover from Hurricane Harvey, the city is finding hope in their baseball team, the Astros. One Houston philanthropist is helping honor those who saved lives during the storm. Last night for Game 6 of the World Series, the owner of a furniture chain, we've told you about him before, Mattress Mac, chartered a flight from Houston to Los Angeles for several first responders to see the game in person. The fans say they won't forget it.
We do our job, and we're okay with that. But to have this opportunity, it's just unreal.
You know, the city took a body blow in Hurricane Harvey, and so many people affected, so many lives just devastated, and the Astros are giving us hope again.
Oh, that's awesome. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid. The online show starts in seconds. Tune in at foxnews.com/special report. Click on the button, the story, with guest host Sandra